those that's literally that is against everything that we want in America. Do. I just, if you're at home and you're like, I just want my congressman to just do everything President Trump says, well, then guess what? You want a dictator. You don't care about freedom. And you really need to look inside yourself and examine why would you want that? Because look, I align in so many ways with President Trump and really support much of what his administration is trying to do. But guess what? He's not doing everything right. This war in Iran is the worst thing that could be happening right now. And you're about to see your gases go up, your gas prices go up. You're about to see airline tickets skyrocket. You're going to see all of your food start to go up again, as if it hadn't gone up enough over the past years with Biden in office. We're gonna face a lot of hard times, and all these everyone's retirement accounts are getting pummeled right now because the stock market is just going down. But this isn't going to end anytime soon. So do you really, really want every member of Congress to just blindly vote yes for whatever the White House tells them to? I don't think you do. I really think what the most important thing is how our founding fathers set this up. You have a representative that represents you at home and defends your rights. Because look, here's what you guys don't realize. You know who we don't see in Washington? We don't see you in Washington. Never, hardly ever do we see you in our offices in Washington. When I served in Congress, I hardly ever saw just regular people coming in and saying, hey, I need you to make sure that the Second Amendment doesn't get taken away. Hey, I need to can you do something about my taxes? Hey, would you guys do something to help lower the cost of insurance? I'm getting crushed by insurance. I never saw you guys, ever. You know who I did see constantly? Lobbyists, major industries, big pharma, the military industrial complex, major industries. And everyone that represented those. Who?
You didn't see any of the foreign lobbyists because you had a sign on your door that said, don't come in if you're a foreign lobbyist.
That's true. As a matter of fact, I had the law in there. Yeah. They had to stay out. If they weren't registered, they could not come in my office. But Thomas, isn't it true? That's all we see in Washington.
Yes.
Is the people representing the foreign yes. countries, foreign interests, and major industries, not the American people.
And you see it in the legislation. That's the cronyism. They get it written into the rules, and then they also get it written into the laws. And you can raise money in Washington, D.C. I tried it for a while, but the guy who was in charge of raising money for me, he quit because he couldn't make any money. He said, the lobbyists, they're too afraid to give to you. Even the ones that there's some of them, who maybe agreed with my policy on trade or something like that, but they just stopped giving to me in Washington, D.C. It's, I guess it's not.
That's a great thing. That's great.
Right.
That's a badge of honor.
Matt Gaetz took a stand. He said, I'm not going to take any money in Washington, D.C. Yep. I took a stand and said, I'm going to vote this way. And they quit giving me money in Washington, D.C. I didn't have to say I won't take it.
Yeah, I said I'm not taking it. I said no PAC money and no special interest money and definitely no APAC money. And that's the major difference. It's just shocking to me that these three billionaires think they can come in and buy Kentucky's 4th district, literally buy it. And I can't imagine if the people that live there, Thomas, in your district really understood what's happening. I think they would lose it. I think they would run that guy, Ed Gallerin, out of town. And he should be. Shame on him. It's pathetic.
Yeah, 95% of his money is from Israeli first lobbies. So, and you can see it. There's Miriam Adelson, John Paulson, and Paul Singer. By the way, they support abortion. They support trans activists. They've done fundraisers for Chuck Schumer. Like they're actually literally the Epstein class. John Paulson was at fundraisers that like organized a fundraiser for Howard Lutnick that Jeffrey Epstein helped fund. Like they're the Epstein class, but the thing they care most about is not America. It's about Israel. And that's why they're mad at me. And by the way, I'm not against Israel. If you ask me, does a country have a right to exist? I can't think of a country that doesn't have a right to exist, right?
Exactly.
It's almost like the BLM movement, where you had to say Black Lives Matter, right? If in Washington, D.C., you don't kiss the feet of AIPAC, they want you to say that Israel matters more than any other country. I'm sorry, it doesn't. Great Britain is a better ally to us than Israel. They're not.
That's right.
They've not gotten us into any wars that I can think of. Like, I don't even think we got involved in the Falklands. That was their own deal. But,
no, that's a great point. That's a great point. And that's why everyone needs to stand up against this. And it's not anti-Semitic. It's not being hateful towards Jewish people. Absolutely, Israel has a right to exist. They have a right to defend themselves, and they can do it. They have nuclear weapons. So Israel is very capable of defending themselves, but they shouldn't be demanding our money, $3.8 billion every single year. They shouldn't be demanding our sons and daughters to go and die for them in wars that they want to continually fight. Look, we're against terrorism. You're against terrorism. You have stood hard on the line against every single form of terrorism and attack on Americans and attack on America's military. And that's one thing I know about you, Thomas. But you are also a great American patriot because you're standing up and fighting for your district and saying, how in the world can this foreign money be used in an election to steal a seat in Kentucky? And I just, that's something it's so much I can't almost lose words to talk about it.
The group that spent the most against me, that doesn't have named people behind them, we won't know who the billionaires are, probably the same billionaires, but it's the Republican Jewish Coalition. And I am not racist. I'm not xenophobic.
No.
I don't pick any group of people over another group of people. But the RJC is literally selling "Make Israel Great Again" mugs for like $36 on WinRed. And then they're taking some of that money and spending it against me. They're spending about $250,000 a week against me right now. And it's not because I'm anti-Semitic, because I'm not anti-Semitic.
No, you're not.
It's because I won't vote to send the money to Israel. Now, some people have said, well, where's the AIPAC money? Now, here's what's interesting. AIPAC, now they have a bad name. So they try to hide the fact that they're donating to candidates. They used to proudly bundle money and give it to candidates, but they're doing it differently now. They send their donors to a website. And so we know, for instance, in the first quarter that my opponent reported money, which was the fourth quarter of last year, it looks like, as far as we can tell, 95% of his donations came through one payment vendor called Democracy Engine. Now, this is not WinRed. This is not Anodot, which I use. This is called Democracy Engine. It was founded by like the founder of Act Blue. Okay. And they're typically either neutral organizations like Chamber of Commerce or No Labels, or they're left wing, or they're AIPAC. And so he had to report $50,000 expense to Democracy Engine. Well, that's the payment vendor that AIPAC uses. At 5%, that means $1 million of his dollars.
Your opponent, is that who you're talking about? It's totally funded by leftists.
Yes. Well, get this too. Okay. We did some research. So he said, oh, you're getting money from Democrats, from people that give to Democrats. So we looked at his max donors. We found out that 85% of his max donors also give to Democrats, and 79% of his max donors are Democrat super donors. Now, why is that? How do you just you couldn't even randomly end up with 79% and 85% Democrat donors to your campaign? It's because it's all just AIPAC money that's bundled, and most of them give to Democrats as well. They're single issue.
That's right.
And so that's how he ended up with over 80% of his donors being Democrat donors. Now, in all fairness, 37% of my max donors, we did the same statistic. That was my first question. Okay. Before we point out this statistic, what is my number? 37% of my max donors have also given to Democrats. But it's not Democrats like Chuck Schumer or Nancy Pelosi like he has. These are Democrats like Bobby Kennedy and Tulsi Gabbard and Andrew Yang. Those are the kind of Democrats that the people who donate to me typically have given to. But again, 85% of his max donors have given to Democrats. So that's a very interesting thing that people need to know. And that's just because he's taken all the max donors that AIPAC can bundle to him. And people don't know that. What if the people here in Kentucky knew that 95% of the money that's being used for the $7 million of TV ads that they've run have all come from a single interest, which is foreign aid to Israel and war in the Middle East?
That's incredible. I think they would be outraged. I know people all over the country would be outraged. And for the RJC to sell mugs for donations saying make Israel great again, one has to ask, why don't they all move to Israel and work on making Israel great? Go live there. Why do all these people want to buy a seat in Congress from Kentucky? And why do they want to try to take out Thomas Massie, who is literally the one man standing in Congress that actually defends your liberty, defends your freedoms, fights to keep you out of debt, which we're nearly $40 trillion in debt, tries to keep your sons and daughters or your brothers and sisters or whoever you have that serves in the military out of foreign wars. Why are they so intent on taking Thomas Massie out? Why is the foreign interest lobby so intent on taking out Thomas Massie, who I would say is the only true America First member of Congress? And I think that's the real conversation. And I think that's what the good people in Kentucky's 4th District should be asking themselves when they go to the polls to vote. That's what they should be talking about at their dinner tables. That's what they should be talking about in their political meetings. And, if it were me, I think I would lock arms with every single person in that district. And it's kind of it's a foreign invasion. Kentucky's 4th District is being invaded by a foreign lobby and by foreign money to take out an America First congressman. And I think it's repulsive, absolutely repulsive. And people, you guys watching this, you need to donate money to Thomas Massie right now. And MassieMoneybomb.com is where you need to do it, because this is beyond being a MAGA candidate or a Republican candidate, or it's beyond these labels. We have peeled back the onion. We have peeled it all back. And I can tell you, because I served in Congress and I saw it firsthand, our Congress, our United States Congress, is completely controlled by the Israeli lobby. And I have proof of it because I introduced an amendment, many amendments actually, to try to strip funding from multiple foreign countries. I'm talking about Egypt. I'm talking about multiple foreign countries. And Israel was one of the amendments I had. And I could get a lot of votes from my Republican colleagues and some Democrats to stop your money from going to countries like Egypt and other countries. But when it came down to Israel, I just want you to know, Thomas Massie was the only Republican that voted with me to stop your hard-earned tax dollars from going to Israel. That was it. It was me and Thomas. And there were 4 Democrats. Me and Thomas and the squad. That was it. So look, that's how bought off Congress is. And that's how important this race is. I'm going to plead with you guys one more time that this race is truly, truly about stopping foreign money and foreign interests from buying Kentucky 4th District and keeping a good congressman there fighting for us every single day in Washington.
Thank you, Marjorie. I see that Clayton and maybe Natalie are online now and ready to join us.
Okay, great. Thanks for having me.
Marjorie, you know, I hope I don't lose for America's sake. But if I do, I'm going to come down and visit you.
I hope you do. And then we'll replan how to get this country back on track in a real way. And I bet you we'd have tens of millions of Americans with us.
Absolutely. Thank you, Marjorie. God bless.
Thank you. Thank you, Thomas.
We are closing in on the $200,000 mark. We're within $10,000. Oh, look at that. We're within $8,000. You guys keep donating. We're going to hit that in, oh my gosh, look at that. We're going to hit that in no time, guys. That's awesome. I do want to read this comment here from Damian Kelly, 2174. My two favorite people. Keep the fight. Keep the fight. Keep the faith. Keep the fight. Keep the faith. All of you. That's a good message for us today. And now we have Clayton. Why don't you take it away, Robert?
We have Clayton Morse of Redacted News that does great coverage around the globe, YouTube, Rumble, and elsewhere, wherever you can find him. I remember when I used to watch you on Fox in the mornings. But I got to tell you, this version, the unadulterated Clayton Morse, I'm a big fan of. I enjoyed the Fox News version, but the other is great. Can you talk about like what we have is a situation in America, our constitutional republic, was supposed to have representatives. Those representatives supposed to have everyday jobs and so forth. Now they are bought and paid for by a small group of elite oligarchs, and they're trying to buy off the last district that is not represented by the elite oligarchs or a candidate puppeteered by them. And we're in the most consequential potential war, and maybe in American history. If this goes the way the President Trump is talking about it, let's take out desalination plants. Let's take out electricity plants. Let's starve. Let's turn Iran into Gaza, that kind of mentality, which Iran may reciprocate. And then the whole Gulf coast, all the Gulf Coast countries are going to look like Gaza. I think that supporting Thomas Massie, the MassieMoneybomb.com, for everybody out there, let's get that over 200,000 before Clayton checks out. Is this as important as anything? The White House is watching this. And if the White House sees Massie overachieving and overperforming expectations in terms of grassroots donations, maybe it will be a tipping factor to keep the president from putting ground troops in harm's way in Iran. Stop him from doing something devastating that might wreck the global economy and wreck American society in ways that may not be redeemable anytime soon. So if you're anti-war, if you're for food freedom, political freedom, medical freedom, financial freedom, you name it, there's nobody better. Or if you just want Americans representing American interest in Congress, no better way to do it than the MassieMoneybomb.com. But from your long study of this, can you talk about how important these kind of elections are? Because the signal it sends to everybody in Washington, everybody around the world, you can stand up to the man and win.
I think it's true. I think, when you look at the current state of politics, there's tens of millions of Americans that don't vote because they feel like this uniparty has kept them away, has not represented the real voice of the American public, and has kept them, at an arm's distance, where, as Congressman Massie was just talking about with Marjorie Taylor Greene, the moneyed interest in Washington, D.C. have eliminated like the voice of the people in many ways, and have done their damnedest to try to eliminate the voice of the people, whether it's the massive military industrial complex building in almost every congressman's backyard so that they always have to say, well, these bombs for Iran, it supports jobs in my district. So they've gotten very savvy about building, whether it's Boeing or Northrop Grumman or all of them, building in districts all over the United States. So they're virtually in everyone's backyard. And so when you have all of that money, when you're up against big pharmaceutical companies, when you're up against the big defense contractors, so many Americans have just checked out. And they've said, we can't, how are we going to change anything? When they see somebody like Thomas Massie and they see the support that he has across this country, talk to any real conservative out there, and they'll say, God, I wish Massie was in my district. I wish he represented my district. I talk to them all the time. That we could disagree about so many things, but when I talk to real conservatives, that's a common denominator. It's how many members of Congress can I count on one hand that I actually support and care about and actually think that represents the United States of America, represents America first values, it represents this country, not foreign interests. And they usually come back with like one answer. One answer, Congressman Massie. That's it. He might get a few other ones in there, peppered in there. Now that Marjorie's gone, we're dwindling down because the amount of money. And you saw, of course, recently during the primaries, you see all these APEC tweets sort of celebrating their big victories, and they're very callous about it. So who are you? Get out of my politics. Get out of my country. Get off of X. I don't need you torpedoing candidates who are America first or going after these candidates who don't represent foreign influence in American politics so that we can go and fight and die in these foreign wars. I mean, you saw the news, of course, the news that Israel has said, according to Israeli 12 News Channel and others, multiple sources now in Israel saying, we're not going to send any IDF soldiers or Israeli soldiers to fight in Iran if U.S. puts boots on the ground in Iran. Like, we're not going to do that. Of course they're not. Because they want to use the United States as a proxy for that. So, again, I think these types of elections are so incredibly important, and it sends a message to the White House. It sends a message to the rest of the country who are other candidates who've been too scared to throw their hat into the ring because they're worried they're going to have, APEC money targeting them. But if we had more Thomas Massie standing up across the United States, we could actually take our country back. I really believe that. And go back to what we stand for as a nation. Go back to the core principles. Go back to George Washington's farewell address about not being involved in foreign entanglements and putting America first. And I'm so disheartened by this current state of things. 40 trillion, and let's talk about the money piece of this, $40 trillion in debt. It's unsustainable. I mean, how can we create a military budget for 1.5 trillion, then ask an additional 200 billion to fight in some Middle East boondoggle, which is going to be an absolute catastrophe? We had Joe Kent on the show today who said this is a catastrophic escalation. Thousands of Americans will likely die. And I spoke to an intelligence source today who told me, he said, Clayton, it will take an act of God for Americans to not be killed in a disaster with boots on the ground in these Middle East wars. And we've been promised these things. We were promised we were not going to be a part of this anymore. Like, we need to send a message to Washington that we have had enough. We are absolutely fed up. And when I have just random friends who aren't as deeply involved in this stuff as you and I, who are texting me, they're like, are you buying, extra food supplies and prepping? And I said, my God, man. Yeah, I am. I'm trying to take care of my family, making sure we have extra supplies on hand because who knows what's coming. So it's deeply disturbing, and I hope that we can send a message to Washington and supporting Congressman Massie 100%.
Exactly. And all of you can do that at home at MassieMoneybomb.com. Speaking of those big bills, recently a mutual friend of ours, Colonel McGregor, who served in President Trump's first administration, helped keep him out of new wars in that first administration, was trying to get us out of the everywhere else. That's what he was tasked with. President Trump didn't ultimately have the guts to pull the trigger on all of that. Though one place he did order withdrawn was from Syria. The order wasn't executed, and Joe Kent's wife died because of it. And so that's the consequences. Young American men and women are going to die for an unnecessary war that could also have all kinds of catastrophic economic consequences. And right now, as we speak, there's going to be a debate and a vote coming up in the next week or two in Congress on, are we going to send $200 billion more to fund this war, and whether even to authorize the war. And you have Congresswoman Mace and Congresswoman Boebert, the people who voted for the Epstein Files Transparency Act, saying they may not vote for it. Others will have the courage to step forward if they see people are standing behind Thomas Massie. So that's why you go to MassieMoneybomb.com. But Colonel McGregor said it great. Someone asked him, what's the solution these days? It seems sort of really dim as to what's happening in America. And he said, what we need is 800 more Thomas Massies to fill as many seats as possible. He goes, that's how you could solve some of these problems. Could you, in the interviews you've gone through, describe what some of the catastrophic consequences of this war, if it escalates in Iran, for America and the world?
Well, if you look at the 30,000 foot level of this, right, and maybe not get into the weeds of how much it's going to affect our Big Mac, I think the larger story here is about the AI surveillance state that they are absolutely trying to create as a result of this. And then, of course, we fight in the politics, right? We fight here But really, this uniparty wants mass surveillance. They want, a technocracy that runs the United States. I believe in many ways, the White House is already in many ways outsourced in that regard already. Using the backdrop of war as this great catalyst in order to create that, so that we need, a digital ID, we need a central bank digital currency. Our money is worthless, so we'll have a Fed, create this Fed Now digital currency program that we all get on. There'll be some sort of a universal basic income, right? They'll keep our social credit score much the same way that China does. So that's the larger fear that I have about these massive events, these massive World War III moments, the Patriot Act after 9/11 moments, using these massive wars in order to create that kind of change. We already saw their trial run with COVID and what they plan to do. So that's my 30,000 foot level fear. But then just at the granular level, when you look at just whether it's gas prices, energy prices across the country, with these all tied together, massive AI data center boom in the United States, and how it's driving up energy costs for average Americans, what it's going to do to young people, what is the future of this country going to look like? My daughter, who's 13, we were just talking the other day, and she said, I don't know how I'm going to become an adult. She just was talking about the cost of things, because I stopped to fill up my gas tank. And she said, whoa, like she looked at the bill. She was like $70. She's like, I don't think I want to become an adult. And that's terrifying. That's just a terrible thing for the future of our country, where for the first time in many decades, in 100 years or more, younger generation doesn't have the opportunity to do as well as their parents' generation. So we're sort of cutting them off now, to the point where, are they going to be able to buy a house until they're in their 40s? They're going to be renting, going massively into debt in order to just pay for gas, just pay for utilities, just to take a family, a few of their friends out to dinner once in a while. It's just unbelievable. The sticker shock in this country. We're already seeing it, of course, as you look at how this is going to cascade from the oil markets and diesel markets across, what this is going to do to manufacturing across the United States. I spoke to a farmer the other day on our show, and he's really upset about how this is going to cascade across American farms, because you've already had the consolidation of American farms into just a few, and to sort of pick off those last remaining independent farmers because costs are so exorbitantly high. So there's going to be, I don't know that we'll have a full accounting of this anytime soon, but it's going to be a disaster. And we are already, I think, on the precipice of that disaster at nearly $40 trillion in debt, if that is the real number. And if we don't rein this in anytime soon, I think this could be the worst worst we've seen it in my generation. Make 2008 look like child's play compared to what we're about to see, and I'm really troubled by it.
And very much, Massie is sort of the last people holding the line against the surveillance state, against the big ag monopolizing our food supply, against these crazy wars overseas, against all of it. To your point, we're already seeing as a new pretext, COVID was the pretext for this control grid system of, big ag, big tech, big media, big pharma. We're already seeing aspects of it applied in Asia right now, and in Australia right now, because they're using the excuse of the war and fuel limits. Okay, now we're going to ration it. Maybe what else are they going to do? And at the same time, they're trying to push through the reauthorization of FISA right now. Something President Trump campaigned on not doing. Something that Jim Jordan said he wasn't going to do. Yeah. And now they're trying to sneak it in under the guise of war. Can you describe for people that, the reason why it's very important, go to MassieMoneybomb.com and support Massie, is these are some of the few people that it's under the guise of war, more often than pandemics or other things, that they try to steal and strip all of our freedoms from us.
Well, because the argument, well, at least from Catherine Austin Fitts and others, is that, you have war as a great catalyst for fear, right? And, like Rahm Emanuel once said, never let a good, catastrophe go to waste, right? In order to create that fear, then it's about our safety. So then when you start to hear about Iranian sleeper cells are next door in your house, right? They're coming to your house. Therefore, we need to have cameras on every corner. Therefore, We need to have you make sure you've got a digital ID set up so that we can track and make sure that you're not one of the bad guys, but that you're safe, right? It's always couched either around convenience or safety. So the convenience is you don't need to carry your wallet anymore. You don't need to worry about cash, that dirty cash that carries COVID. Remember, they told us the cash with COVID could appear on dollar bills. So you don't need that. You're just going to have a Fed Now app in your phone that allows you to log in, allows you to get access to your universal basic income, tracks where you're going from city to city based on this 15-minute city structure, which is already being put in place as part of Agenda 2030, is already rolling out in parts of the UK. We're already seeing it. So you can't go to grandma's house, and you can't drive 45 minutes outside of your district, like the Hunger Games, because you've used up your carbon allotment. Your carbon footprint has grown too much. So you're not allowed this month to drive 45 minutes outside of your selected area, or it could affect your social credit score. It could affect your ability to get money, get a loan. All of these things are tied together. When they have all of this data, a CIA whistleblower told me, he said, the CIA's main goal, like their biggest, capstone, the biggest thing that they aspire to is to be able to know your thoughts. And if they can control and know your thoughts, that's the pinnacle. And by having this massive AI control and this control grid of everything, they know your thoughts. They know what you do at night. They know how you spend money. They know where you travel. Game over. And then with President Trump talking about 6G technology with the ability to penetrate your body and watch everything, you're really going to have to go out in the middle of the woods, live in Wyoming somewhere, in order to not have these 6G towers that are tracking and watching your every movement through walls. So this is, we've got to have people that are fighting back. I asked Joe Kent that today. I said, are there people inside the White House who are actively pushing back on this surveillance state? Like this Palantir money that has flowed through Washington. And, you have the vice president of the United States with Palantir money. How much of this, is there any pushback? And he said, you'll be surprised to hear that, yes, there's quite a bit of pushback inside the White House against this surveillance state in favor of civil liberties. But I don't know that that voice is strong enough. And it's certainly not in Congress, except for just a few people. And Thomas Massie is at the top of that list.
Absolutely. Thanks, Clayton. I think we have for coming in redacted news. Great to follow on multiple platforms. You name it. Great interviews, great guests. Keep people informed. Much more so than if they're at your old broadcasting station these days. If they're at Fox News, or listen to some loony general, or they listen to a senator who likes to spend spare time as an old single man at Disney World. I don't know what that's about. Maybe he's in the Epstein files somewhere. Maybe it's in a footnote. Maybe that's what they're still hiding in the White House. I don't know. But thank you very much, Clayton, for coming on.
Great seeing you. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. We have two libertarian legends, both in economic politics and global geopolitics. I once made the mistake many years ago of disagreeing with Scott Horton on Israel. He was dead right. I was dead wrong, as we're witnessing, unfortunately, in live time. I would rather have been proven wrong in a different way than this. But the two great voices for independence of thought, independence of analysis, great historical records of predictive success, and here to support the one and only person standing up to these forever wars, standing up to these central bank controls, standing up to out-of-control budgets and the surveillance state. That's Thomas Massie. Go to MassieMoneyBomb.com. Let's get it over 200,000 by the time we're done with these two legends.
Absolutely. Am I going to have Tom and Scott at once? Oh, I do. Hello, gentlemen.
Hi.
All
right. Here I am.
Thank you both. Hey, all is forgiven, Robert. Fist bump, buddy.
Absolutely.
Glad to have you on board with us.
I was thinking, I'd forgotten all about that. You guys unlocked a core memory. I'd forgotten about that. It's all brought up now, but it's all forgiven. It's so great.
Absolutely. It's good on everything now, as far as I can tell.
Yes, absolutely. It was so great to have you both here supporting Thomas Massie. And we are closing in on 200,000 if we haven't hit it yet. I think we're at 199. Oh, look at that. Look. Oh, come on, guys. We're like $307 away. Who's going to drop that? Let's go. Come on. We're going to
it should be me because I had everything filled out on my laptop so I could just click send. And then I left the laptop downstairs to come up and use my big desktop. So I just texted the family group chat. Would somebody please bring me my laptop? I have everything pre-populated to just click. And I'm maxing out to Massie. I'm maxing out. I have not maxed out
to a candidate since Ron Paul. But I know there are people listening to me. I know there are people listening to me who have the means to do that. And if this isn't the election of 2026 or the election of many election years, I don't know what is, because this is the man who represents something other than the same old, which we thought we were getting a break from. Here we go. I got it, baby. I got it. I'm going to do, somebody's going to beat me to it though.
I'm running behind today, but I'm donating as soon as this segment's over.
Yeah, well, I'm donating during the segment because I'm a tacky person. And let's see if I show up. Did that go through? I think it did go through. But now let's see in real time how quickly it
hasn't populated quite yet. While we're waiting for it to populate, Tom, why is keeping Congressman Massie in Congress more important right now than strict party loyalty with Donald Trump?
Well, those are two different questions, because party loyalty, you could say Massie's the best Republican of them all. You know, you're out Republicaning the Republicans by being a Thomas Massie supporter. But also, I think Thomas Massie is just like, you know, let's say Donald Trump's speeches from a year and a half ago. Oh, we hit the milestone, baby.
Look at you. Tom Woods has put us over the milestone. Tom Woods did not ruin everything by forgetting his laptop. He got his laptop and he put us over the milestone.
That is really thrilling. All right, so now there are more milestones.
Blow me away here, man. I love it.
We got more milestones to hit, but yeah, I mean, it's everybody knows that Thomas Massie represents what we were told the whole movement was all about, and everybody knows that. Anybody arguing otherwise is not being serious. We all know. We all have ears to hear. We all have eyes to read with. We all know what was promised and said. And I'm sorry, it doesn't count to say, well, I found a newspaper clipping from 1980 in which Trump said such. I mean, can we get out of here? You look at the whole uninterrupted series of statements. So, and I also believe that there will be a chilling effect without the reelection of Thomas Massie, that there'll be that maybe some other voices will feel encouraged to speak out, that it's possible you can live to tell the tale if you stand up for something that you believe in and that's true and important. You don't get destroyed. You might take some abuse, but you also win a whole lot of supporters all over the country. And I think that's a very important message to send.
Absolutely. Now, Scott, how does Massie's record on foreign policy and opposing unnecessary wars set him apart from everybody else in Congress?
Well, you know, I think he has a few fellow travelers, but I've been very pleased to see Massie. You know, he always was, you know, basically Ron Paulian on foreign policy, but it seems like he's been getting better and better on it all the time. As American foreign policy gets worse and worse, it's pretty easy for him to find things to object to. And then I think the Israelis went after him for some mild criticism, and he really realized what a problem the Israel lobby is in the United States and how much influence they have over our foreign policy and how much worse they help make it, such as in the current war. And quite frankly, you know, we need somebody who has the courage of a Dr. Ron Paul, like he had back in 2008, to just say, no, you're all wrong about this. And you have been. And the right answer is what I say instead, and be willing to say it and mean it. And, you know, Scott Horton's law says that politicians can always be counted on to keep all their bad promises and break all their good ones. But I think with a guy like Thomas Massie, we know that he really means what he says about stuff like this, about, for example, you know, his economic policies and his foreign policy, his protection of civil liberties and all of that. These are core beliefs, not just focus group sound bites or anything like that. He really is the very closest thing to Ron Paul that we have in the U.S. House right now.
Now, each of you, how do you think when Thomas Massie beats Ed, what's that going to look like for America when that happens? Because the Israel First lobby are saying there's not a chance that's going to happen, but it's going to happen. So what do you think is going to happen? What's that going to look like?
Well, I think it's going to show that the authentic America is not so easily cowed, and that we haven't all had lobotomies. You know, we haven't, to make me think that in fact, what America first really means is pummeling Iran. That's America first. And they're saying stuff like this with a straight face. You know, you don't have to be a lobotomy to be right, to have a lobotomy to be right of center. You know, you don't have to change on a dime what you believe. You don't have to. I've seen on X people taking quotations one right by the other of various opinion molders on that platform who 18 months ago had every argument in the world against an invasion like this. And then, even though nothing has changed between then and now they say the exact opposite. Thomas Massie's victory means you don't have to do that. That is not required of you. You can maintain your brain, you can maintain your principles, your powers of analysis, and you can stand up in real time to something gone terribly wrong. Yeah, it's wonderful that years later, in 2018, even John McCain admitted that he thought the war in Iraq was a mistake. It took him till 2018, but he admitted it. Well, that's awesome in 2018. But what was hard was being against it in 2003. And it's going to be a whole lot of people in 2035 going to tell us how terrible a decision this Iran war was. And that'll be just super awesome. But what's a lot better is people like Thomas Massie in 2026 who get up and give the speeches against it, and who know they'll be called the usual names, who know they'll say he's a Democrat. Yeah, he's the most base Democrat in world history, if that's the case. So this is to me an indication that there's still some energy in the real America that really believes in America first, that it hasn't been completely demoralized by all the stabs in the back, but that it's ready to keep on fighting for what's right.
Great, thank you. And guys, if you're being inspired by anything tonight, remember to go to MassieMoneybomb.com and let's keep this rolling. And Scott, what about you?
Well, yeah, I mean, I agree with all of that. And I would just say, if you want to compare this to 2003, we're way ahead of where we were. I mean, I was actually listening to Tom being interviewed on the Orrin McIntyre show earlier today, and was thinking about just how grateful I am that there's so many great people who are, to the right of me, who are, avowed conservatives, who are absolutely opposed to this war. And you see even Matt Walsh over at the Daily Wire is not standing for it whatsoever. And, Mike Cernovich has been saying lots of great things. Orrin McIntyre has been saying a lot of great things. And I think, Sean Davis and Tom Elliott and lots of great right-wingers have been saying lots of great anti-war stuff right now. So this is a huge part of the base that they represent clearly here. And so this is great politics for a couple of years from now, when told you so is going to be a hell of a currency. And so, we absolutely need to keep Thomas Massie in the House. It'd be nice to see him in the Senate, or maybe even run for higher office than that. But what's most important is that we have somebody up there in the legislature, at the very least, who in Ron Paulian fashion gets on the floor and speaks the truth and is brave enough to call out the real corruption and by name. And there are very few who are willing to do that. So it's obviously very important. If there's nothing that the rest of the country can do to get rid of Lindsey Graham in South Carolina, at least maybe we can help keep Thomas Massie in the House from Kentucky,
Yes. Now, for both of you again, do you believe that the support for Israel, AIPAC funding, all these billionaires, is this all astroturfed, or do you believe that there's actually a very large American movement, like a overwhelming American movement that supports what's going on?
Well, I don't think Paul Singer's from Kentucky.
Point.
Or Miriam Adelson.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we can measure these things, as Scott is implying here. We can look at how many donors each candidate has and where the donors are from and whether they're from Kentucky or not. Now, there's nothing wrong with having an America-based campaign, but it turns out that Massie wins on both counts in terms of donors in Kentucky and outside Kentucky. But his donors are not fixated on a particular issue involving a foreign country. It's crazy that they've rigged the game so that you can't complain about this without being called, one of these magic words that's supposed to shut down debate. It doesn't work anymore because people are having that debate now. Is it really a good thing that the interests of another country might trump our own, or that we automatically assume that we are always aligned with another country? Nobody's always aligned with another country, no matter what it is. Whatever two countries you choose, sometimes their interests are aligned, but a lot of times not. We haven't had that conversation because this has been a bipartisan policy. So neither party thinks that it needs to talk about it. It's like the Federal Reserve before Ron Paul. Nobody talked about that. Everybody just accepts it. But they're not accepting this anymore because they're understanding that this is hurting our country and that we wish everyone well, including Israel. But our country has to come first because, as Tucker Carlson would say, then what else is this whole thing for, if not to prioritize Americans?
And do you believe that his election will, I guess, reaffirm principled conservatism and libertarianism within our country?
I certainly hope so. I certainly hope that it encourages people to get their news from sources other than Fox News, which I'm sorry, Fox News has done its share of good over the years. I will concede that. But at this point, it has I don't want to be mean to anybody. Okay. Let's just say it strongly misleads people. If I was just saying this today, my friend Bob Murphy, the economist, was pointing out that as he's followed the news of the war, he's been following certain individuals who are dissidents, who are against the war, and nothing that's happened in the war has surprised him. He said, whereas on the other hand, if I got all my information from Fox News and Ben Shapiro, the world would be completely mystifying to me. It would be inexplicable what's going on in the world. Nothing would make sense. And I think that goes to show that a lot of people in the so-called conservative movement are just listening to the wrong people. They're listening to the wrong sources. They have the wrong idea of what it means to be conservative. And they got to turn off that Ben Shapiro, turn off turn off Fox News, and turn on Thomas Massie's Twitter feed, listen to his speeches. That's a pretty darn good start.
Absolutely. And I mean, when it comes to Thomas Massie and being a staunch constitutional conservative, we remember, was it the CARES Act several years ago where everybody's trying to vote from home? And Thomas Massie went to DC and he demanded a quorum, and he said, I will not watch this republic die in an empty chamber. And he demanded a quorum. He demanded we acted constitutionally, even in the name of a crisis. So there's nobody really like him that'll do. I mean, the Senate, for instance, just had a skeleton crew, 5 guys, who try to defund, parts of DHS, the border security, and the TS, or they did fund the T. They tried to not fund border security and what was the other one? ICE. And they did that with 5 people in the middle of the night. If Thomas Massie was a senator, that wouldn't have happened. He would have called a quorum, and as soon as you do that, then they have to recognize it. So we need overall more people. And if you listening feel like we need more people, go to MassieMoneybomb.com and get in there.
Incidentally, I understand that when he did that, there was a long line of congressmen who wanted to get in line to abuse him for having made them come back. How dare you do this? And I would add to that, by the way, I don't think we who are outside of government have any idea what it's like to be Thomas Massie, or Rand Paul for that matter, but particularly Thomas Massie. The pressure this guy is under is beyond anything any of us have ever endured in our lives, private or professional. It is unrelenting and from every side. And lesser men would make excuses to themselves and say, well, maybe I can change my rhetoric a little bit, or maybe I can try to see this point of view and think of some way to rationalize just going along to get along. And he refuses to do it. He refuses to do it. It is most of his critics could not survive 10 minutes in his shoes, because most of his critics want to be on the side of, the big popular kid. And so they want to be on his side to be cool. The idea of standing against people when they're wrong, but also siding with them when they're right, but making the individual judgment, this is inconceivable to his opponents. These are the kids in high school who would have died 1,000 deaths rather than not be part of the in crowd. And that's a very dangerous kind of person to have in government. With Massie, we have the opposite. The guy who is going to stand his ground come what may. And as I say, his critics who are not worthy to shine his shoes could not stand in those shoes for 10 minutes without going home crying to their mommies.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, gentlemen, both for being here tonight with us.
My pleasure. Thank you very much. And hello, Dave. See you later.
Donate, everybody.
Yes, donate. Give.
MassieMoneybomb.com. Go and give to our representative.
Two legends of the Scott Horton, a great book, Provoked, a lot of great books about how we get trapped into these dumb wars, how we get snookered into these dumb wars, how do we get stuck in these dumb wars, though we may be currently, enough already. The insanity of what was going on in Afghanistan, in Iraq, what happened in Libya and Syria, his predictive accuracy is off the charts. Now we have someone who's the debate destroyer. Probably ended a little Fredo Cuomo's career. The one and only the great comic Dave Smith. Dave, how you doing?
Good, man. How are you guys? Thank you for having me. I'm sorry. I'm in a hotel and I have very bad Wi-Fi, so I have to do this on my phone. I hope it works okay.
Oh yeah, it all looks good. All sounds good. Everybody go to, if you want to support food freedom, if you want to oppose the war, if you want to support medical freedom, if you want to support real constitutional congressional representatives, which Thomas Massie is one of the only ones to consistently do so. Just one illustration, I represent the Amish farmer, Amos Miller, when he was under full throttle attack from the state and federal government. This is a guy who's delivered hundreds of thousands of food products to tens of thousands of Americans for more than a quarter century, who was a fifth-generation farmer, and yet the government was trying to shut him down because he delivered real, fresh, good food. The only one congressman came to his defense. Only one congressman, but it was important to have any member of Congress there. It impacted certain decisions, let's say, that happened later on in that case. That man was Thomas Massie. Dave, we're looking at I told people, go to MassieMoneybomb.com if you just want to send a message to the White House to please, for the love of God, de-escalate into this war and this conflict. We're at risk. You were on with Joe Rogan talking about the risk that this poses. I mean, not only the American political coalition. So if you're one of those conservatives out there that wants Republicans to have any chance to survive in the future, you've got to support Thomas Massie to help get the message to the White House to not escalate this war, because if it escalates, you may be lost for a decade, folks. But independent of that, talked about what some of the risks are for this conflict that just keep getting worse and worse and worse. And now we have the president talking about maybe we'll take out their water, maybe we'll take out ther electricity, which means they'll take out the water and electricity and all the oil from the Gulf Coast, because it's been tit for tat all the way through. Can you talk a little bit about that and how important it is for people to get their message heard so that somebody in Washington maybe listens, so that we get off this escalator to hell?
Sure. Well, I mean, first of all, with the war itself, I mean, obviously, look, this thing is a disaster already, and the question at this point is just kind of like, are we gonna get just this disaster and not much worse than that, or are we on our way to a real catastrophe here? And look, I'm not saying this is going to be Iraq or Afghanistan. I don't think we're going to commit like hundreds of thousands of ground troops to Iran and have a 20-year war, because I just don't think the people would tolerate it. I think that would destroy. And I'm not being hyperbolic, I think the United States of America collapses before we could do something like that again. But at the same time, there's all types of downside risks to this war that we didn't see in any of the global war on terrorism. Like, there was never a point in Iraq or Afghanistan or Syria or Libya or Somalia or Yemen or the drone bombing campaign in Pakistan or anything that was like, oh, this might destroy the world economy. Millions of people's drinking water and energy sources are at risk. So the war itself is very, very dangerous. And of course, just on some level, for, I hate to use the term the national soul. It's like a Joe Biden term, but it does feel like there's something where, throughout history, like, great men have presented different theories of when war should be fought. Of course, there's the just war theory of Christianity. And then there's, obviously the framers of the United States had their own thoughts about it. And, me personally, I don't think the just war theory or the constitutional system is perfect. I think it allows for too much war, to be honest. But at least there was some semblance of well, you only fight a war if you're attacked, and you don't target civilians, and you can't be disproportionate. And in the constitutional sense, Congress must declare the war. And the fact that we've gotten to a place as a society, as a civilization, where we just go, nah, if we feel like it. I can't tell you how many people I saw support the Venezuela strike, how many right-wingers I saw support it. Just like, hey, if it's in our interest. So if it's in our interest, we could just kill a bunch of people and take their stuff. Donald Trump said the other day, the president of the United States says out loud, we don't call it a war because then it would be illegal. Like, I don't know, man. If we tolerate that, then we're very far gone. And the Thomas Massie, this race particularly, this is such a must win for this country, for this nation. Because the idea that, first of all, this is almost like, is there any such thing as democracy? Does it even kind of exist a little bit? You tell me the most unpopular war in American history. And what would the percentage of the American people? I haven't seen polling on this. What percentage of the American people support the Epstein files being covered up? What percentage of the American people support congressmen not having to vote on giant, like all the issues that the reason why Thomas Massie is hated by this administration are at least 80-20 issues, and the 20% opposed to it must be out of their minds. And so if you're telling me that guy, for the crime of not wanting to cover up the Epstein files, not wanting to get us into stupid new wars in the Middle East, and having some semblance of fiscal responsibility means that the Israel lobby pumps tens of millions of dollars into your race to unseat you for that crime, for the crime of actually being MAGA and America First, for following what every single one. I can't tell you guys how many big accounts there are out there. A year ago, the Trump supporting accounts, a year ago, if I had said no new stupid wars in the Middle East, they would have been agreeing with me, retweeting me. Hell yeah, Dave, after this. And sorry, I'm ranting, but I'll wrap up on this. But Thomas Massie is so refreshing because I see so much of this in politics and in media, and particularly to call it the people like in the new media, like in the internet podcast scene, who essentially just have no opinions of their own, no principles at all. They don't even pretend to. The same guys who would have, if Kamala Harris was leading us into a war in Iran right now, they'd all be against it. They'd all say it's a deep state war of the Obama, Biden, Harris deep state. But because Trump told them to do it, they'll do it. And you see so many of these people last year with the 12-day war, they go, Israel's going to do it alone. Then Israel can't do it alone. Okay, we just have to drunk the bunker busters. No Americans will die. Well, now we're back. Americans die. Now they'll defend that. But no boots on the ground. And every last one of those guys, if Donald Trump puts boots on the ground, they'll support it. And so Massie and Marjorie Taylor Greene and Rand Paul and like the real ones out there, they end up getting punished for just being a person with some principles who actually stand for something. And if that's enough to get you unseated in Congress, then the political means have been exhausted and we're in a really ugly place in this country.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Dave, make a really good point. Oh, there's Congressman Massey coming in to introduce him. I was saying, Dave, you make a really good point. Like you, me, Congressman Massey, we're all the same people that we were last year, but we don't agree with the way that everybody has shifted this year. So, we're cancelable.
Let me speak to a few things that Dave threw out there. Dave, dogs don't bark at parked cars. And they can't simultaneously say I'm irrelevant backbencher and then spend $10 million in a Republican primary when they should be desperately trying to cling on to the majority. They can't have decided that I am worthy of all this money and still say I'm irrelevant, because the reality is I am relevant, and I'm trying to make Congress relevant by forcing a vote on the war. Look, if we're going to have a war, even for the people who may be in favor of intervention, at least acknowledge constitutionally that in a war that Congress has to vote on it, because you don't want a situation where there's an unauthorized war and then Congress has to pay for it. Because what we owe our soldiers and airmen and seamen is the promise that if you accomplish these objectives, and by the way, we're going to give you the tools you need and the rules of engagement that allow you to get the job done, that you can then come home and we'll be done with this war once you put your life on the line to accomplish those things. And the other thing we need to acknowledge is there is a cost to war. Like they're asking us for $200 billion in a supplemental, and they're saying it costs about $1 billion a day. Now it probably costs more than that, but if it did cost $1.2 billion a day, then 200 billion means they want to go on for another 6 months, is what that means. And so, we got to be honest here and say, what are the objectives? How long will it take? How are we going to get there? And, a lot of people are okay with $200 billion of spending because they don't see that coming out of their pocket. But when gas hits over $4 a gallon here in Kentucky, where it was $1 cheaper than that, $1.25 cheaper, or diesel's over $5, then they start caring about the war. when it's another $20 or $50, depending on what you drive to fill up your tank. So, you know, and then you said something else. You said a phrase, if we tolerate that. And that's a key phrase, because when I first got into government as a county executive, I looked at the laws and the statutes that had been passed, and they hadn't been passed legally. Like, you needed to notice the meeting 30 days in advance and then notice the second reading of the bill. And they didn't do a bunch of that stuff. And I thought, man, I could undo a bunch of these ordinances that I don't like just on a technicality. And then what I realized is government is not what's written down. Government is what the people who are in office can get away with. What will you tolerate? And then that is what you get for government. You'll get whatever you will tolerate. So, and one other point I wanted to make, you know, Dave has caused a lot of synapses to fire here. You know, I tell people their election in their congressional district probably was stolen, but it wasn't stolen at the ballot box. It was stolen in Washington, D.C., when the representative who took the voting card that they gave him or her handed it to the speaker on the first day of Congress or to the whip team and said, use this as you will. And what Mike Johnson has done is inexcusable. He has basically shut down the legislative branch, which is actually not even good for Donald Trump, because he has to do everything by executive order. And trust me, it's the pendulum's anything good that he's done by executive order is going to get undone, because Mike Johnson thinks the best Congress is a Congress that does nothing. He parked the car, and I figured out a way to hotwire the ignition and take it for a spin with the Epstein files. And we got something done. Other than the big, beautiful bill, which was just a big, giant spending bill to bankrupt our country, which people are going to find out eventually, and they're already seeing that, because you pay the tax is the spending level that you will tolerate, because once it's spent, it's coming out of your wallet, either through inflation or through higher interest rates because the government had to borrow so much money, or through a tax, or through a tariff that we're not going to call a tax. But other than the big, beautiful, not so beautiful spending bill, the really only thing that Congress has gotten done, other than basically spend at Joe Biden levels plus, is the Epstein Files Transparency Act. And I forced them to do that. So that's why they want me gone. I'm not just, it's not just that I have good ideas that would help America. I figured out how to get some stuff done.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And, you know, I think like one of the things you touched on there, which is like, it's always just the most important thing, but probably everyone who's been on this Moneybomb stream all night tonight, all of us, I think in our own ways, really stood up to the insanity of the progressive Democratic establishment over the last decade. And, you know, and for good reason, you know, I mean, there was, first off, I mean, just like the debt, the COVID tyranny, framing Donald Trump for being a treasonous spy in his first administration, and, you know, pretending Joe Biden wasn't senile, and just the war in Ukraine, and just a million different things, and teaching little boys that they're actually girls, just, and all of us kind of stood up. And I think a lot of us also defended Donald Trump against some of the worst accusations from those guys. And all of us kind of together defeated that, both culturally and politically. And by 1 year ago today, the entire like energy of the country was this like America first, anti-war, anti-woke, anti-insanity feeling. And this was, and the Democrats were down. They were at like 22% approval ratings, and Donald Trump had his highest approval ratings of his presidency, both terms, a year ago today. And what ended up happening is last summer, really, Donald Trump just flatly betrayed the nation and betrayed his most, you know, fundamental duty in life by covering up the Epstein files and launching a war in Iran on behalf of a foreign country. And now, of course, we're back in that war 6 or 7 months later. But the point, one of the things that people, you know, people will say, people like Thomas Massie, you know, you're hurting the Republican chances because you're exposing that they want to cover up the Epstein file or something like that. You're like, well, it wouldn't be hurting the chances if they didn't want to cover up the Epstein file. And right. Quietly, what you might notice here is that the Democrats have been winning in elections since then. And they won a huge mayoral race in New York City and a gubernatorial race in New Jersey, both of which should have been competitive. They won a gubernatorial race in Virginia, and they've won a couple others and been getting outvoted. And every last one of these Democrats who are about to take the House and maybe also the Senate, they're running on unaffordability. That's the new thing. And they don't even know what unaffordability means. Like, you couldn't even, like, they don't even know the term currency debasement. But what all of this is that when you have a government that you can't afford, you can only tax so much and you can only borrow so much. And so you have to start printing the money. And so because Donald Trump, in his own words, this is not a conspiracy, which he admits, because Miriam Adelson gave him so much money and asked for stuff for Israel all day long, he's got to keep printing the money because we don't have it. And so everyone's prices are still going up. And as you touched on, Congressman, that's the biggest issue. It was the number one issue all through the 2024 election. Maybe immigration came close, but it was the economy and the price of everything. Because, and I know this, I'm sure everyone listening to this knows, people, regular Americans, are getting killed by the price inflation over the last 5 years. Absolutely devastated. People who, the truck driver who's married to a nurse, who they both bring in maybe 120 grand a year and they got 3 or 4 kids, they're underwater. They're living on a credit card. And for this to be the case in America, the most prosperous nation on earth, is just, it's such a betrayal of our leadership. And, that's the game right there. So if you want to hand the country right back over to President AOC or Gavin Newsom or whoever it's going to be, this is the path. I'll say that the only option for us to not hand the country back over to those psychopaths is to embrace the Thomas Massie agenda, the real America First agenda. No unnecessary wars, government transparency, accountability for the criminals in DC, and fiscal sanity. That is an overwhelmingly popular message. And it shows the fact that you're going to win despite the fact that they're pouring all this money into the race against you.
Well, the inflation, it all started it went into overdrive in 2020, March of 2020 with the CARES Act, which has been mentioned before. They spent $2 trillion on March 27th, and every country was spending more than they had ever spent. So there was nobody to borrow it from. So to your point, Dave, they created $5 trillion out of thin air in 2020 because they knew there would be more stimulus bills like that, bailout bills, whatever you want to call them. Incidentally, the CARES Act funded Donald Trump's demise electorally because it had money to keep all the states afloat and to keep them so that they could all do mail-in ballots. But the inflation started then. They did under Pelosi, which Donald Trump signed Pelosi's bills, but I was against them. Okay. And that's the first time that I drew the ire of the White House, but it was a Pelosi bill for $2 trillion. Then they followed it up in December. By the way, they had $1,200 checks in there for everybody. That was the cheese in the trap that I called it. The mice never figure out why the cheese is free. Well, the cheese was in the trap. Every time they did a big giant bill, 95% of it went to Wall Street and the banks and the corporations. And then there were some programs in there that if you're a fraud, you could participate in those programs. By the way, my opponent took 2 PPP loans, never paid them back, and one of them was to bale hay. Now, when he filled out that application, he knew he was never going to pay the money back, but he didn't know it would become public knowledge that he applied for money to bale hay. Like, there is no farmer here in Kentucky that borrowed money to bale hay with a PPP loan other than my opponent. That's just a little sidetrack. But then under Biden, they did 2 more stimulus bills, and now we're doing the war and the inflation. We're just at the beginning of another inflection point, because here's what's going to follow. That fuel cost, which everybody feels immediately when they fill up their tank, is going to eventually cause the price of everything to go up. With AI and robotics, everything gets way more efficient. But the one thing that's not getting cheaper is the price of energy to rearrange those molecules to make a car or something like that. But also in farming, we're seeing the price of fertilizer here in Kentucky. Fertilizer that was $300 or $400 a ton is now $600 a ton. And farmers are like, oh my gosh, do I put less fertilizer on? Like, it's a combination of things. They'll have to pay more for the fertilizer. They'll put less of it on. You'll have less production. You'll have more money chasing fewer goods. We're just beginning to see what's going to cause the rampant inflation, the likes of which you still haven't seen yet, but it will be in grocery stores. Right now it's at the gas pump, but you're going to see it fast and loose in the grocery stores.
Yeah. And that's of course, with the huge question mark hanging over all of us of what's going to happen with this war and how much worse does this get. And, obviously we're all hopeful that hopefully this stops soon at some point. Donald Trump just says it was tremendous and a victory, and maybe Iran will take that deal, and maybe even he can rein Israel in, and they'll stop going for what they obviously are going for right now, which is a regime collapse. But that's a big hope, and it doesn't look great right now. And so add in that, like, who knows where this thing is going to spiral out to. And I guess the thing that I think you've spent a lot of your career talking about this, and I know Dr. Paul, both Dr. Pauls have as well. And what I talk about kind of all the time is that it just doesn't need to be like this. And that's kind of the point, is that we don't need to do this. Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, I remember when you were first getting some traction on your on the Epstein bill. He had a couple quotes. One, I think he told Politico, and then another one was in a press conference where he said, "This will destroy the political order if we find out what's in these files."
Yeah.
And it's I remember thinking a similar thing when Donald Trump was talking about how Netanyahu needs a pardon because otherwise it will turn people against each other. And I remember when I was a bit younger and had a bit less gray in my beard. I remember when Barack Obama came in, and there was a lot of pressure from the anti-war left activists on him at the time to prosecute Bush administration officials, I think all the way up to George W. Bush, for heinous war crimes, which were clearly committed. There's really no and Obama said no. He said we weren't going to do that because it was time to move forward. It was time to look forward, which is an odd way to talk about prosecuting crime, because it typically relies on looking backward. But that was his, we're going to move on. What's followed has been the worst political, racial, cultural divides in this country that have ever existed in my lifetime. And so the idea that I would humbly suggest that actually what is a threat to our political order is covering up for the criminals in Washington. But if we had 500 Thomas Massies in Congress, there's no reason why we couldn't just actually hold people accountable for the crimes that they committed. Really get to the bottom of it. Have a Justice Department that's not redacting all these files and withholding all the other ones. Let's figure out what code. Let's crack that code. What were they? All those emails, everyone's speaking in code. What does that mean? And yeah, let's haul some people off and see them go to jail if they committed heinous crimes. And that would actually do a lot to bring the country together. And again, to your point, we could have drastic spending and regulation and not fight stupid wars. We could do all of that. We're capable of it.
Listen, I don't want 500 of me in Congress, because they could turn out to be my evil twins and just have different ideology, but just as effective and cunning as I am. So I like having a lot of people who are followers in Congress. Let me give you the math I try to explain. This might sound like a black pill, but it's actually a red pill. There are 30 members of Congress. I would count myself among them, and Marjorie Taylor Greene and people like Lauren Boebert and Nancy Mace. Those are my partners in the crime of uncovering the pedophiles. Okay. There are about 30 folks like that. Okay. 30 good people out of a Republican conference in the House that has 220. They wake up every day and they want to do the right thing, even if it would cost them their election, even if it would cost them money, if it would cost them votes. Then there's 30 bad folks. I mean, Congress, these are the ones that do the insider trading. These are the ones who are going to die in office. They'll be in a nursing home, not even voting, and their constituents won't even know it because they just get reelected, and they are evil. Okay. They are the worst. They will do the wrong thing, even if the right thing would get them more votes and a better chance at reelection. They're just programmed to do the wrong thing. Okay, 220 minus 30 minus 30. That leaves 160 members of Congress who are all running the same program. They're like NPCs. They will follow whichever set of leadership prevails. And by the way, right now it's the bad set that prevail. Okay, it's and the bad set are driven by the lobbyists. What's interesting is Mike Johnson went from he was among the 160. He was never among the 30 good guys. He was among the 160, and he became one of the 30 who do the wrong thing every day. But if our good 30, well, first of all, if I win this re-election, you get 29 more Thomas Massies, because there are 29 waiting to see, of the 30 good ones, waiting to see if I can win. They come up to me on the floor and tell me this is the right vote. I just don't think I can take this vote and get reelected. Okay. We can give them an existence proof that you can get reelected. And by the way, if there were 30 of us who were getting in trouble for doing the right thing, then that money, the Israeli lobby would have to spread their money out. I actually like that Lindsey Graham's race is close, because I imagine the RJC and the AIPAC are now rushing down to South Carolina to do triage on their robot. But so here's the good news. It sounds like a black pill that there's 160 NPCs. I like that. I don't want those to be 160 Thomas Massies. I just want the 30 good guys to feel like they can do the right thing and still win their reelection. And maybe we get 15 more of those 30. Maybe we get some more Marjorie Taylor Greenes and Lauren Boeberts and those kind of people elected. And our group becomes 45 who can't be moved. And then we could control the agenda on any given day, like I did on the Epstein files, but with unambiguously conservative things like cutting money. I can't do an Epstein file type discharge petition on cutting funding, because there just aren't 218 signatures to cut funding in DC. But if 30 of us become 45 and we lock arms, we get 160 that will come along. These folks put on a red shirt and salute the leadership, and they will do whatever they got to do for the party. And that, again, is what my opponent is promising to be. He's promising to be one of the 160 NPCs who just goes along to get along. I said earlier in this program, I said the problem with Congress is you have men and women who campaign on promises, and then they get to Washington, D.C. and go along to get along. This is the first time I've had to run against somebody who promises to go along to get along. Like, that's his campaign message. He won't debate me. I've said I'll take any forum. I'm kind of like you, Dave. I'll debate this guy anywhere. I'll even let Donald Trump moderate the debate. I'll let his campaign manager moderate the debate. Just let me have an open microphone for a little bit, and then let him say what he actually believes. He's not going to be able to articulate a platform, because an NPC cannot do that. They cannot articulate what they're for, because they're promising to be for whatever the president wants. And the problem is, what the president wants has changed over time, and what I've promised the people has never changed. And by the way, I would take this note. I've come on the live feed before, and I haven't asked for money. And my staff here, it's like, dude, you've got to ask for money. Okay, so we are at $233,000. Dave, you're responsible for 20,000 of that. So we're going to give everybody a scorecard. How many dollars per minute was raised when they were on the live stream? And you're in competition with Marjorie Taylor Greene and Tom Woods and Scott Horton. But
Tom and Scott were on together, so they should only get like half credit for the money.
I think that's fair. So, but we want to get over $250,000. My goal for today, honestly, we set it at $100,000. I thought that was pretty achievable. I also want to tell you, we have 2,680 unique donors that have contributed to that number. So the average is $75. If each of those 2,600 people would just give $20 right now, we could add $52,000 to that number. So if you're still watching the live, oh, there it's moving again. It's moving. Yes, somebody did their $20. if we can get to $250,000, and this will break every like fundraising record that I've ever had for one day. We've already let you in on a little secret. We've broken every record I've ever had. And we're going to need that money. And then also, I think it's important for me to tell people what we're going to spend it on. The other side has been tearing down my name. My favorabilities, I'm not going to lie, have taken a hit because Fox won't let me on TV. They've embargoed me. They don't want the truth. They don't want anybody talking about the big bill and how it increases spending. They don't want anybody on there talking about the Constitution. And so they have sort of embargoed me in some sense. And then the other side, the RJC and AIPAC, it's a negative smear campaign. It's a total negative smear campaign. So what are we going to use this money for? We're going to run positive ads. My TV people are coming back to my farm on Friday, and we are going to make some ads about the things that I stand for, what I have done, you know, the things that I've promised that I've delivered. And we are going to shore up my image here in Kentucky in the face of overwhelming attacks. And by the way, we're still winning this race. We are ahead. It's not like Calci. I know everybody's going and looking at Calci and Polymarket. And I like the fact that they think I'm beating him 2-1. The race is a lot closer than that, folks. It's a lot closer than that. This could, you know, there's 50 days, not that I'm counting, but there's exactly 50 days between now and 7 weeks and a day until the Tuesday of reckoning. And so we need to use this money, and we'll run positive ads. You can feel good about it. And I'll give it back to you, Dave.
Yeah, well, I think one of the things sorry, go ahead, Jesse.
Sorry. They'll pull me up eventually. Hi. Okay. So I want to interject real quick. We had a $14,000 donation from John B. Thank you, John B.
Wow. He's got to be married to do that. FYI.
Yeah, that's
so thank you to John D's spouse.
yes.
Well.
Yes. Also, Justin Amash is in the wings, so I just wanted to give y'all the heads up.
Oh yeah, surprise, Dave. I told Amash he needs to jump on with me and you here. Are you good?
Very nice. I love it. Love Justin. Absolutely.
All right. Well, take me off the screen and leave Amash if you can put him on there with Dave Smith.
Absolutely.
And Dave, I know you got a show tomorrow, a big show. We're not going to say which one you're doing, but I want you to be in tip-top shape. I know you've been traveling. We don't want to keep you on here too long.
I got like another 10 minutes, and then I got to run because the only restaurant in this town is closing in a few minutes. So I got to eat something before I go to bed. But yes, big show. That's a good tease. Big show tomorrow. But I'll only tell you what it is if you donate another $20,000 in the next 10 minutes.
Oh, wow.
If you do that, I'll announce the show.
Okay, come off the money then. We got to find out. If you got a Mosh, put him on here. And then, Dave, if you got to leave to go eat, actually, if you just want to say hi to Amash or give us some parting thoughts so you can go eat.
Sure. Well, hello, Justin. Good to see you, brother. I just wanted to say that on the point that you made before, because I think this is something really important that people like me kind of miss a little bit, which is that, so when you have, from my perspective, I'm like a guy in the podcast scene and I'm on social media and stuff. And so when you see like the Israel lobby really attacking people, to us, it almost seems like that doesn't work anymore. That just backfires. Everyone I know loves Thomas Massie more than they've ever loved him. So waste your money if you want to. But the thing about it is that there are old ladies in Kentucky and, boomers. And I'm not bad people, you know what I mean? Like great people, but who happen to maybe listen to Fox News, or maybe these commercials do work on them and they're not hearing the other side of the story. And so, like, to your point, there is still, even today, a lot of damage that these type of like slanderous campaigns can do to people. And so again, that just is another point why it is so important to like raise the money and have those positive ads, because you do still, even though I think to people like to the 30-year-olds who love Thomas Massie, they may be missing this, but there still is this older generation, which again, these are Americans too. These are not like our enemies. These are our fathers and our mother-in-laws and our mothers and our aunts and uncles and stuff. And they really do need to hear that. So it really is a great cause to be donating to. we are going to be popping champagne and celebrating when Thomas Massie gets reelected. And yeah, okay, I got to thank you guys so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Dave.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Justin Amash.
Hey, can you guys see me?
Oh, yes.
All right. Oh,
There he is.
Hey, Thomas, how are you doing?
Good. Take it away.
Good. So, well, I'm so happy to be here. Thomas is one of the greatest congressmen we've ever had. I always say we don't appreciate people like Thomas Massie enough. When I was in Congress and I see people running for office, and I'd always get asked to endorse people, I can tell you that basically 10 times out of 10, the person I endorsed did not end up being very good.
I have the same track record.
And these people would come in and they'd say they're going to be liberty people. They're going to support the Constitution. They're going to read the bills. They're going to protect people's privacy and stop the wars. And time and again, they'd get in there and it wouldn't happen. They'd be like, I'd have people come up to me and say, I'm going to just copy what you're doing. I'm sure Thomas Massie had the same thing happen to him. I'm just going to follow what you're doing. And then within 6 months, they're voting exactly like the leadership team. And the great thing about Thomas is he's one of the people I did not endorse when he was first running. I had heard about him on Ron Paul forums, of all places. I'm sure some of you remember that. I'd heard about him and people said Thomas Massie is going to be a great congressman. He's going to go in there and he's going to defend the Constitution. I said, I've heard this a million times. I'll believe it when I see it. And sure enough, Thomas Massie, I can say, of all the people I ever served with, he's the one who lived up to the hype, who lived up to what people said about him, who really embodies the spirit of the founders and the framers of the Constitution. There aren't many people like that. And you don't even have to agree with him on every substantive issue. That's not the point. When we're talking about having a representative, a true representative of the people, it doesn't mean you're going to agree with the person on every single point, because we're all different people. Thomas has his own experiences, his own judgment, and there's sometimes where he and I will disagree and other people will disagree with him or they'll disagree with me. But what you can count on with Thomas, unlike so many other people in Congress, is he's not being bought off by the establishment. He's not doing it because he wants a committee assignment or because he wants a chairmanship or he wants a bunch of funds for his campaign, although we are raising money for him today, but we're doing it the hard way. The easy way in Congress is you just come in there, you press the button that the leadership team tells you to press, and the money's going to come to you. The campaign the committee assignments will come to you. The campaign donations are going to come in. They come in on autopilot. You're not going to have a big primary opponent come in because the leadership team is going to make sure you don't have that. So Thomas is one of those people who will stand up to those who are trying to push him off the path, who are telling him, hey, stick with us and we'll make your life easy. And basically every member of Congress gets seduced by this.
There's one aspect, Justin, too,
yeah,
which I'm sure you remember. To get those plum committee assignments, you have to raise a lot of money and give it to the party. It's like piracy almost. And you can't come back to your district and sit in somebody's living room and do a fundraiser and raise $10,000 or $20,000 from your neighbors and tell them, I'm taking all this money and I'm going to go give it to the Speaker of the House to curry favor so that I can get a better committee assignment. Like, they would never pay for that. So where do you get the money? It's a 24/7, 365 days a year beauty pageant of congressmen parading in front of lobbyists and going and have dinner with them. And the lobbyists are the ones who have the currency that you can spend to buy a better committee seat. And the reason I'm on transportation Adam Smith, okay, said there were 3 roles of government, federal government, to provide for the nation's infrastructure, to institute a system of justice, and to provide for the national defense. Well, guess what? The Infrastructure Committee is actually a B committee in Congress. They rank them A, B, C. C is Veterans Affairs, which I think is terrible. But the lobbyists don't want to give you money if you're on Veterans Affairs. There may be a few food vendors and construction people that build VA hospitals, but nobody else would give you money if you're on the Veterans Affairs. And on the T&I committee, it's not a very lucrative committee in the sense that congressmen look at these as lucrative committees, because unfortunately infrastructure is not prioritized as much as banking. So banking would be the A committee, for instance, or the tax committee, because it's hard to do earmarks, but you can still do tax marks, right? Justin was always against these things. This is where we disagreed a little bit. Like, if you could lower taxes for one group of people, I would tend to be for it. And Justin was like, no, the suffering needs to continue until everybody's taxes go down. You're playing favorites. And so this is like one of those instances where you could like see things differently based, but I just wanted to inject that, Justin, because you also experienced that. They did not. I'm not on an A committee. The Judiciary Committee, even though it has enormous jurisdiction over FBI, DOJ, ATF, the reality is we don't do that much oversight. If we did a lot of oversight of those committees, then of those agencies, then it would be a more important committee. Like, ostensibly, it's an important committee. And it deals with your gun rights. It deals with whether marijuana should be legal. It deals with the Constitution and constitutional amendments. It deals with patents and trademarks and copyrights. Like, the Judiciary Committee, the whole court system is defined by the Judiciary Committee. It's an important committee, but again, it's a B committee because there aren't a lot of lobbyists who make a lot of money off of the DOJ and the FBI and the ATF. I'll give it back to you, Justin. I just wanted to inject, that's another part of the game that you never played and I don't play.
Yeah, no, and that's great. And I would hear people say, well, if you don't have the Plum committee assignments, how can you affect the change? Well, I can tell you, and you know this, even the people with those committee assignments don't really run the show. No. There's someone in leadership telling them how to vote. They're telling them what to do, what bills they can bring to the floor. It used to be at one time in Congress's history where committees had a little more influence. They could really affect the process. These days, what you really need in Congress is that person who's going to go and tell the people how it is, tell the people what's going on. It's not so much, being on a particular committee so that you can get this kind of thing done for your district or that kind of thing, because at the end of the day, that is coming from on top. Someone in the White House is telling someone in the leadership team that this is what's going to go, and that's the way it is. So
let me give you an example.
Members of Congress have way less power.
Let me give you an example of that. So this week in the Judiciary Committee, we had 8 bills to mark up. And one of the bills they kept delaying. It was so that data centers, they had special privileges and immunity, that they would get to skip all the permitting process. Like, if their permits were getting denied, they couldn't get sued and they couldn't have their construction work stopped. Now, this is actually one of those things where Justin's theory of things is correct, which is they were trying to give special privileges. You would think I would be inclined to vote if I don't agree with these onerous regulatory things that keep things from happening, that I would be inclined to give a reprieve to a group of people. The problem is it was just for data centers, okay? It wasn't for farms. It wasn't for everybody else. It was just for data centers. And I asked Grok to tell me the 5 groups that would benefit the most from this piece of legislation. And Grok listed Google, Amazon, like everybody, Oracle. It listed 5 corporations that build data centers. And so what happened is I crafted an amendment I would say maybe like a poison pill amendment. I had an amendment ready to go. I was going to say, well, you don't get these special privileges and immunities if you're building your data center on farmland. Like, and they hate to muck up a bill, but who's going to vote against, like, everybody should hate taking our nation's best farmland and putting data centers in it. And I say, I'm not against solar panels, but I'm against the subsidies. But if I can't get rid of the subsidies, at least offer an amendment that says we're not going to subsidize solar panels in your cornfield, like where we grow our food. So I did the same sort of amendment for this bill. But to your point, Justin, I tweeted what I was doing. I was live tweeting in the committee that I'm going after this bill. I've got an amendment to cut into it. And they pulled the bill in real time. They took it off the docket because there were two other Republicans. One was, I'm not going to say who they are, because then they won't get any donations from Google or from Amazon or Oracle. But there were two other Republicans that were like, I'm not voting for this. And so through transparency, even though I had one vote and probably didn't have enough votes to take it down, I was able to get them to pull the bill.
Yeah, and that is the power of someone like Thomas Massie, which is an extraordinary power and a rare thing to have, because so many of the people there are just, going along to get along. Whatever will get them to the next day is what they're going to go for. I like to say, I know Thomas has talked about this in the past, and we might have slightly different takes on it, but I think we're generally in the same place on this. Most members of Congress are not really that ambitious. I don't think the average one, they're not even necessarily that, conniving or anything. I think most of them are just there because it's the best job they ever had. And they like going back to their district and being called the honorable so-and-so and being introduced at the dinners. And they don't even aspire to any higher office beyond being a representative in Congress, which is, of course, a high office. But they are happy being where they are. And all they want in life is just to stay there. They don't want to make tough decisions. They don't want to have to decide on legislation. They don't want to have to think about amendments. So when the leadership team says, hey, no more floor amendments, we're just going to decide all these in the Rules Committee, and only a few amendments are going to come, and they're going to be managers' amendments or things that leadership has approved in advance. Most of them are pretty happy with that. And then you have someone like Thomas who's willing to rock the boat. And it's not, it's not because Thomas himself is trying to move on to some other higher office. It's because Thomas cares about the Constitution. He cares about our system of governance. And this system is what has brought our country so much prosperity over the years, and we're at risk of losing it. I like to say that we basically have a Congress that is mostly ornamental now. It functions as a thing just to look at because it makes us feel good to think that we have a representative system of government. It's just like, it brings us a good feeling. Let's all pretend that it's representative. Look, there's three separate branches, and there's this Congress, and it's supposed to check the executive branch, and it's supposed to pass legislation. Let's all just pretend it still does that because it makes people feel good. When in reality, none of that happens anymore. Most of the decision making is with the White House, whether it's Republican or Democrat, and it's a few leaders in each party. And that's about it.
Yeah. I say it's a vestigial organ of the Republic. They try to make, it's like an appendix. They've tried to turn congressmen into ombudsmen, right? Or docents right. At the museum. We can give tours, we can write strongly worded letters, and we can have fake debates on the floor of the House. But when you throw a real punch, they get mad. Or when you try to assert the real power of Congress through the power of the purse or the power to declare war, they get mad. And so you upset them. The other thing I wanted to inject here, Justin, is we just crossed $250,000 while you were speaking.
Nice.
So look at that.
That's impressive. That's amazing.
I had, Yeah, I had some, I thought we could raise at least $100,000 today because we had 2,600 signups. Now there are some goofballs that sign up with fake email addresses. So we had like at least 2,500 legitimate signups. And I thought if the average is $40, we could at least get, what is that? $2,500, $100,000. So that was the goal we set. But secretly I was thinking, all right, I know our average is about $80. Like it does every week, the average turns out to be $80 because most people give $20 or $17.76. Some give $50, but then somebody slides in with $3,500 or $7,000 and they bring the average up to $80. So I was said, all right, we got 2,500 signups at $80. We could do 200,000, but I am not making that the goal because I don't want to miss the goal. But while you were speaking, we hit $250,000, brother.
Well, there's still time today. We can still get to 300,000. When I saw it this morning and I saw the pace you were on, I did think you'd hit $250,000. I thought you'd get there based on the pace, but now you've exceeded $250,000. So that's pretty impressive. And, it is important to raise this money for Thomas. I mean, there are thousands of people out there, many, many, many people from Kentucky, and then people from across the country supporting Thomas. I want people to understand how important that is, because those who stand on principle like Thomas Massie, they don't get any support from the establishment. They don't get any support from the PAC community, really. They don't get support from any of the corporate interests out there. All those people are throwing money in to help establishment candidates, including his opponent in this race. Just a few people can give to a super PAC, and it might be a few donors from some other state somewhere else in the country that give to a super PAC and could fund millions of dollars for an opponent of someone like Thomas Massie. And that's in fact what's happening in this case too. So he needs those resources to fight back. I mean, this makes a difference. You don't need to match when you're up against establishment candidates. You don't need to match them dollar for dollar. You just need to have enough to get your message out there, to defend your record, and to stand on principle so that people in your district know exactly what you're about. And I think we're doing that for Thomas. It's fantastic news that he's still ahead in this race. He's going to be fighting to the finish here. I think it's inevitable that when there's this much money in a race, it can be close. So we all need to keep supporting him, donating to him. And then if you can't donate, go online, give him verbal support. When someone attacks him, point out why that person's wrong. I've seen these attacks on Thomas and they're totally ridiculous. 99.9% of the time, they're not even, they'll state that he has a position that he doesn't even hold. They'll say he voted for something that he didn't vote for. I mean, it's wild. Or that he voted against something that he actually did vote for.
This is a great point. And they'll do it while I'm on the floor voting. So it literally, they know that it's 2 hours before I can get to my phone and undo the lie they just told. And they'll do it on purpose. I think they know where I'm at and that I'm out of service during that period of time, because I'll come back 2 hours later and they'll say, oh, he voted against the SAVE Act. I'm like, no, that's vote for the SAVE Act hasn't even happened tonight. What are you talking about? You're talking about some stupid procedural thing that's going to let them spend all the money they want. It has nothing to do with the SAVE Act. It has to do with other bills. But to Justin's point, there is an army of, I don't even want to call them people, an army of accounts online, on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram. They are not, some of them are real people. I call them bots, BOUGHTS. They've been bought. They may have started out as some mom who, they're like the evil version of Josie, of Redheaded Libertarian. Like they got some modicum of following and then they sold out, unlike our host here. And they said, wow, I can get all this money just by pimping one country and trashing candidates. And you mean 49 out of my 50 posts can be exactly what I want, and I only need to slip one in every other day? I just need to retweet cat litter or DC drainage. Those are, I'm not going to say their real names. And what I see is they're being effective. And when you see a commercial on TV, they have to disclose who paid for it. When you send a piece of political mail, you have to disclose who paid for it. Right now, it's the Wild West on the internet. I love the internet. It's great. But I think there are certain groups of people who are taking advantage of the fact that they can spend millions of dollars on social media campaigns. I'll call them psyops, where they have accounts that aren't even real accounts, or accounts that have been compromised, that are taking some money on the side, and they don't have to disclose on there. Our secret weapon, Justin just alluded to, is we have thousands of people on all of those social media pages who will go in and fight the bots. And God bless you for doing it. Thank you. And that's the point Justin is making. Get in there. If you have no money, but you have a social media account and you see something false, please jump in there and help. And if you can't do anything else, put my donation link. These bots aren't really smart. They may have a lot of followers, and you can probably leave my donation link up there, and they won't delete it. So there's lots of things you can do to mess with them.
And you can get them community noted. And I've noticed a lot of those on people attacking you, where they'll say something that's completely false. And then sure enough, within, 12 hours, I'll see a community note on there, because the lies are so blatant, so total, like just BS, that they get community noted very fast. And it's very easy to prove the lie. And I've sometimes seen people even delete posts that they make because they know it's so completely off base. But yeah, those bot accounts are proliferating, and the way to fight back is to fight back with real people. Have real people on there. All of you at home who are watching Thomas, who know what he's about, stand up for him, defend him, get the real message out about what he's doing. People say ridiculous things. They say he's a Democrat. They say, oh, these are such obvious lies. Thomas is the most conservative member that I served with. He's the most conservative member of the House of Representatives. He's the most constitutional member I've served with. And even at times when I've disagreed with Thomas, we'll have a conversation, and he's the one person I've ever had these conversations with who really made me sit back and think, yeah, maybe I am wrong. Maybe Thomas is right. And I've had those conversations with him where he persuaded me about something. And it's not even because of like some kind of stubbornness on my part. It's just that when you're in Congress, you're dealing with people who usually don't think about anything, honestly. Most of them are voting one way or another because they were told how to vote. And so when you run into someone like Thomas who can actually have a discussion with you, it's amazing. And there were many times where we had these conversations where he'll say, hey, this is where I disagree with you. And I went back and thought about it and said, yeah, I think he's right about that. And other times, even when I didn't completely agree with him, I said, he's got a good point, though. I mean, he makes a really good point. And to show you how out of touch people are in Congress, and the difference between Thomas Massie, who reads the bills, who understands what he's doing. I remember one time there was a vote on the House floor, and we were voting on someone's bill. And I walked up to that person on the House floor, and I asked them a question about the bill. I said, I don't remember what the issue was, but I asked them a question about it because I wanted something clarified. It was up on the board. And they were like, what bill are you talking about? I said, it's the one we're voting on right now. This is your bill. And the person was like, this is my bill? And they didn't even know it was their bill. They didn't even know they had this bill, because as Thomas knows, what happens so often in Congress is these bills are written by someone else. It might be a lobbyist. It might be the leadership team. And then they just farm these bills out. They hand them out. They say, who's got a tough race? I'll give you a bill.
I got another version of that same story. That's a true story. I'm not going to say his name because he's still in Congress. And I really genuinely like the guy. He's one of the 30 that I say are trying to do the right thing every day. Sometimes they get their lunch money stolen before lunchtime. But he had this opioid bill. Now, if you like 8 years ago or 6 years ago, I forget when it was, Justin was still there. They gave everybody who had a tough race an opioid bill, that you were doing something about the opioid epidemic, because some of their political consultants said this is the biggest thing in these swing districts is you need to look like you're doing something on opioids. I counted them. We had 52 votes on 52 different opioid bills because every congressman that was at risk got an opioid bill written for them and brought to the floor. They had to do nothing to get it there. So I'm voting no on somebody's opioid bill. And he comes up to me and he says, "Why are you voting against my bill?" And I said, "Look, if it's cancer research and it's something, there may be a national nexus and you can't do it at a state level one-off and there's not enough private incentives. Like, I could be persuaded, but you're providing healthcare. Like, this is a facility, facilities or whatever. And we just campaigned against Obamacare. And you're coming up with another healthcare thing that the states should be doing, not the federal government. So you're not doing research or anything like that. This is literally the Obamacare we campaigned against, just for opioids." And he looked at me, he says, "Well, if this weren't my bill, I'd probably vote against it too." And that's, and I'm like, "Well, why are you bringing this bill?" And he's like, "Because they told me I could get reelected if I got this bill passed with my name on it." So
That's amazing.
that is the crap. Like, people don't believe that. And that is the kind of guy I'm running against, right? He's going to be the one they give bills to. He's going to have a lousy, if he got elected, he would have a lousy voting record. And he would need to go back and campaign on some accomplishments. So they would give him something that never is going to pass the Senate, right? This bill is never going to become law. But he can go back and say, "I got this opioid bill passed," or whatever the issue their political consultants tell them is the important issue of the day. Now, I'm going to have to jump off. I agreed to do an interview with the reporter about this money bomb. And so I am going to share some really good news that we're at $259,000. We actually, because there's a West Coast and there are some abandoned Republicans under, tortured under Gavin Newsom, that have adopted, other congressmen in other districts because they're gerrymandering California, and there's no hope if you're a Republican in California. We could still see this go way up before the end of the night. And there are people on the East Coast that are night owls. So we're looking forward to that. But I got to jump off. I'm going to leave it to Robert and Josie and Justin here and go do the interview. Something my opponent will not do. He will not do long form interviews with any TV station, with any, ironically, he's got an interview lined up with Dan Bongino, the one guy who is responsible, number one, for arresting an autistic kid as a pipe bombing suspect on January 6th. He's trying to take credit for that. They got the wrong guy in jail. He's also the one guy who said they would release the Epstein files, totally caved on that, fought against it, wanted nothing to do with it, and then finally left to go back to do his podcast. So I think it's appropriate that, my opponent, who sat, inert like a bump on a log while this whole Epstein thing and would never make a comment, is going on a podcast from a guy who helped cover up the Epstein files after promising to say he would release them. But anyways, I got to hop off, do this interview. It's not a safe space that I'm going to go do the interview in. It's with a real reporter. And I'm going to talk to him about the success of this money bomb and leave it up to you guys to close this live stream out. I just, again, the money is going to be used for positive ads for me because they're trying to destroy my image. And let me give you an example of what $250,000 means. In the last 5 weeks, which is when people start paying attention, and we're 7 weeks out, I got the money. This money we can spend in the last 5 weeks, it's $50,000 or more every week on TV ads. And I know people are like, people should be informed. Why do they believe these ads? Because they do. They watch the TV. It's also, so we've got 3 media markets. We're on in Louisville media market. We're on in the Cincinnati media market. 2/3 of my constituents receive Cincinnati TV. The Cincinnati airport's actually in Kentucky. People don't even know that. They connect through it. So we spend a lot of money on Cincinnati TV, and we don't spend, there's one media market we haven't had money to spend in. And it costs about $50,000 a week to be in that media market. It's actually the market that covers my own county. The people in my own county are not getting TV ads on broadcast if they watch the networks on broadcast. So this money will let us reach that market in the last 5 weeks, and it's going to be really important. So thank you, and God bless. I'm going to turn the live stream back over to you guys and go do this interview with the reporter about the successful Moneybomb. Thank you.
Well, it's an honor, Thomas. You're the one person who's always earned my support. And I got to tell you, if you didn't earn it, I wouldn't keep supporting you. You know,
Justin is already max donated, by the way.
Yeah, and I'm a max donor, and I would give more if it were lawful to do so. But
Thank you,
unfortunately
Justin.
not.
Appreciate you.
And I do want to say that we appreciate Justin when you were in Congress and Congressman Massie for reading the bills. A lot of times they'll put up an I Love Puppies bill, and that bill will slaughter puppies. And then when one of you would vote against the bill, everybody would say, well, you know, breaking headline, Justin Amash hates puppies, you know, and they show the bill to prove that. Also for the listeners, bots, if you ask them how many R's are in the word strawberry, they don't know. And that's how you can tell if you're dealing with a bot or not, because something about counting the letters within a word, the bots can't really do. And I've had about 90% success asking people I thought were bots how to spell strawberry. So, you know, just a heads up. I have 2 comments here that I want to read from people. So the first one is, how the heck does Justin age backward? Justin, would you care to?
That's funny. Are you going to tell me who set that comment?
Joanna loves British music and liberty.
That's funny. Well, Joanna, yeah, I don't know. Just leaving Congress helps, I think. Now we're trying to keep Thomas in Congress, but you know, he managed to age backwards while being in Congress himself. I mean, the new look Thomas Massie is a good look Thomas Massie. So it's I like what he's doing. He was able to lose his glasses too over time. I still got my glasses, but you know, I think leaving Congress, it just, I've had a good life. I have tried to stay in shape and stay healthy, and I don't know, God's blessed me. So thank you, Joanna.
Thomas Massie is just mogging Congress entirely. He's like super Massie now with how he looks. All right, next question or next comment from Richard Allen. 1253. America doesn't need AIPAC to make America first. We have Thomas Massie and grassroots Americans who love the Constitution and this country. I have a question for you both. Did Lindsey Graham bring his AIPAC handler with him to Disney World?
He looked like he was by himself.
Good.
Yeah, which is a little more creepy, to be honest with you. I like to call him Lady Lindsey Graham, Queen of the War Whores, inviting us all into this brothel of blood. But when you see creepy old guys hanging out, you know, with a little ice cream cone at the Disney World, run. This is not somebody who should be dictating our war policy overseas.
Yeah, I was baffled by it. I mean, he was by, I think, the Tangled restrooms. And I don't know what that was in his hand, like a bubble wand or something.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Is he, you know, releasing bubbles into the air there?
Here's another question.
I think maybe there might be a footnote in the Epstein files somewhere with Lindsey Graham. Maybe that's what they're redacting over there at the Justice Department.
I hope that was a bubble wand. But so is there a pipeline from Warhawk to Disney Adult that I just don't know about?
No.
Well, you could say there's an Epstein class connection.
Yeah, there's a Club 33.
I don't. It is baffling. I don't know what Lindsey Graham was doing there. I mean, was he there with? I don't know what family members he has who might be there, but I think it is an odd thing for an older senator just
He
hang out
made
by
a comment
himself.
on it to someone reached out and outlet reached out, and he said, "I went to lunch with my friend on his. He was on his way to Mar-a-Lago
In the Magic Kingdom?
Magic, or I guess that
Well, he might have a different definition of Magic Kingdom than the rest of us.
he was spotted at the Contemporary Resort. I tracked it based on the chairs of the restaurant he was at because I'm kind of autistic, and he would have been at like the character dining at Chef Mickey's. So
No.
having breakfast or lunch at Chef Mickey's with the characters, and then going to the bathrooms at Walt Disney World afterwards.
I don't know.
But anyway, this is our leadership. This is why we're in Iran, guys.
No one can
Yep.
explain what Lindsay's doing, but yeah, Lindsey Graham for years has been warmongering, has been out there trying to get us into endless conflict. Doesn't really care about the Constitution. Goes back and forth on everything. I mean, here's a guy who